Well, thank you very much for sharing that amazing film with us, and I was pretty impressed. And then I thought it was even more powerful when I got to the ending and saw you listed as director and camera and sound and editor. So, that's quite an impressive feat.
Thanks.
In fact, let's just talk a little bit about the process of making the film itself and the challenges you had to face, and particularly you had the intimacy of the Baghdad parts and just getting into the life of Muhammad and his surrogate family and his school, and then secondly the tension in Nasiriyah and in the Shiite South. I mean, Iraq is probably listed as one of the most dangerous places for journalists to go, but you went in as a filmmaker and kind of a one-man band with the camera. I mean, talk about the challenges you had to overcome to get that.
So I first went to Iraq in 2002, before the war. I went twice before the war, and I wasn't really able to start filming in a serious way because under Saddam Hussein the restrictions were too heavy for journalists, and I couldn't really do what I wanted. Originally, I had this idea that I would follow one family in Baghdad before the war, and then during the war, and then after the war, whatever happened with them. But I wasn't really able to start before the war because of the restrictions. And so I came back right after the bombing, like sometime in April, I guess. And I started, I had already been in Baghdad a couple times, and so I had found a few locations that I liked there, including this one area which was sort of auto repair, kind of light industry, mixed neighborhood with different people of different ethnic backgrounds living there, different religious backgrounds, and so I thought it's a good sort of working class neighborhood, sort of ordinary people, and so I started just interviewing different people in the neighborhood to find out who might be an interesting character to follow. And I just came across this kid, and he just seemed very kind of like a sympathetic character. And I thought he might, although it was difficult to get like a really strong interview from him, but I thought that he would serve as kind of a witness to what was going on around him and the conversations that were happening, and it would be a way for me to sort of make a window onto the situation. So I started filming with him in 2003, early 2003, and I continued probably until the end of the middle of 2004 or something like that. And actually I filmed, in the end I wound up filming 6 different stories in Iraq, all over the country, up in the north, down in the south, I was in Basra and in the marshes and different places. And here in this film there are 3, and there's an additional film I made from one of the other stories I filmed. So in the end, from the 6, I only made 4 complete films. But sometimes you can't use everything that you do. And so I wound up being in Iraq for 2 years until 2005, the spring of 2005. And it became more and more difficult. Actually, in the first year I was there, 2003 until the spring of 2004, that first year wasn't as dangerous as it became later, obviously. A lot of Iraqis were really happy to have the regime gone, and they imagined that the United States was this super organized superpower who was going to come in and solve all of their problems and fix everything and set the country on some kind of stable track. And when they discovered that that wasn't going to happen, then gradually they became more and more upset with the occupation. And then in the spring of 2004, in April, there was a kind of confluence of events where you had simultaneously the first kind of siege of Fallujah going on, which upset the Sunni population a lot. You had the publication of the Abu Ghraib photographs, and you had a kind of the start of armed hostilities between the United States military and other foreign militaries and the Mehdi army. Militia. So simultaneously, basically all of the groups in the bottom part of Iraq started to really take up arms in earnest against the American occupation about 1 year into U.S. presence, and that's when things really got dangerous. But during that first year, it was dangerous, but it wasn't so dangerous that you couldn't work, obviously. And so, I lived in an ordinary residential house on a street corner near Mustansiriya University. You could just reach over the gate and open the gate and come out, come into the yard. And it would have been easy for anyone to get into the house. It was just extremely low security. And I mean, a year later, it would have been crazy to try to live like that, actually, in Baghdad. So
talk about the scenes in the south. Where were you embedded with the Mehdi militia when they went into the market after the alcohol sellers?
Yeah, well, I thought one of the important things that was happening in the country was the rise of Shiite political power, because that wasn't something that had ever happened in the history of the country in the past. That the Shia would be in control, although they're the majority in the country. And so I wanted to follow something that would kind of illustrate this rise of the Shia. And so I'd heard about the Mehdi. There are different Shia factions, but I thought this is kind of the most interesting, most colorful one. And so I went down and I made friends with this guy, Sheikh Aus al-Kafaji, who's kind of the religious leader of the Muqtada Sadr movement in Nasiriyah at that time. And he was a young guy, he was like my age, and pretty open-minded. I talked to him, I showed him my previous film that I'd made in the Gaza Strip. After a while, we had a few dinners together and just sort of chatting about it. And after a while, they allowed me to begin filming, and so I was able to film in their offices, like where they were. I mean, they gave me actually pretty good access in retrospect, and I would stay the night at their houses. I had pretty good access, and so in the end, it wasn't as dangerous as it looks, because they knew who I was. They knew that the guy in charge, Sheikh Aus al-Kafaji in Nasiriyah, that he trusted me and he had given me permission to film, and so it was safe for me to be with them. They weren't, they were fine with me.
Sure, and start thinking of questions, because I'm going to turn it over to you in the audience in just a minute, but let me ask just a couple more. First, a lot of things have happened since you left, particularly the rise of ISIS, the Islamic State, embedded in that Sunni area primarily. Is that something you could have predicted while you were there, that things would spin this badly out?
Well, I mean, I definitely didn't predict any happy endings. I mean, I imagined like the United States leaving from the top of the embassy in helicopters, like, has happened in the past sometimes. But, that didn't happen, but we do have now this situation. I don't know that I could have predicted exactly this, but, by the time I left the country in 2005, I definitely didn't predict any good outcome. And who knows what the future will bring, actually.
Sure, and I'm just curious, did you keep in touch with the characters at all? I'm wondering what happened to Mohammed, for example.
Well, it's really hard to keep in touch. But, Mohammed is now, gosh, he's, probably 20-something.
Oh,
and I know that there was a Canadian editor for the CBC, a woman who was kind of retiring from her position, and she saw my film and she really wanted to help Mohammed, so I put her in touch with the family. And she gave him a stipend every month, and she provided tutoring and different things. And she even went to Iraq and met him there. And so she sent me back photographs of him, kind of like growing up gradually as a teenager and so on. So, as far as I know, he's still alive, but like most people in Baghdad, living in a difficult, fraught situation.
Do you think your film was shown in Iraq? And do you think the characters in it may have seen it?
Well, it's been available online first. For a few years, it was just available as a pirate download, and now I've just made it available for free. This is the same file that's available on my website. So anyone can watch it, and I'm sure I know that that it is seen in Iraq online, because I can see where the downloads are.
They haven't left you any reviews?
Well, no, not really. But I mean, the people I worked with, the Iraqis I worked with, many of them are living now outside of Iraq, and some in the United States and other places, and they seem to like the film. And I don't know. I have, usually if I show the film and there are Iraqis in the audience, say in the Berlin Film Festival or something like that, usually they're kind of rooting for their own group. Like it'll be Kurds in the audience, and they'll say, why did you only show that much of the Kurds? You should have shown more of us. And so, it's usually a kind of sort of jealousy to be included more in the.
So
movie.
it's the audience in Fragments.
Yeah, I guess. But I haven't received any bad reviews.
Yeah, I would imagine they would like to see themselves depicted in there, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a 94-minute movie, and of course you can only do so much. It's a big country, and it's so complicated, and things change all the time, and you always regret the things you're not able to show and include. And I guess I wish I could have just had more normal life. It's easy to include a lot of drama, but it's not the thing that usually happens, I guess.
I thought one of the things that was impressive, particularly in the Baghdad scene, is how the Americans, and in the Shiite areas, how the foreign troops were just kind of a backdrop. They weren't central to the story you were telling. They were in there, and you filmed them kind of as a backdrop almost.
Right. I mean, because they are, in the end, I mean, in the United States and in most countries, we always think that we're the most important ones.
Exactly.
And that we, control events, and we're sort of like this godlike hand coming in and shaping history. But it really isn't like that. Foreign powers come and go, but the Iraqis have to live there. So I decided to kind of keep the American presence to a minimum in the film because I knew they're only there temporarily.
That's why it was so powerful, I think, for everyone to get a look at Iraq through Iraqi eyes from the three fragments, really.
Right. And my main regret is not being able to just give more of that, I guess.
Sure. I've given you plenty of time now to think of all your questions, so it might be a little hard for me to see your hands with the lights here, so we've got some microphones floating around. Yes, please just say your name so we know who you are. Thanks.
Sure. My name is Veronica. I was just wondering about the lack of women, if that was a choice to try to focus on one group of people's thoughts and opinions, or if you had a lack of access to those circles.
Well, you may have heard about the sort of gender divide in strict Islamic countries, and it's actually real. So it means that that there are certain restrictions about who I'm able to easily film and not. Unfortunately, in the three stories that I filmed that are included in this movie, there really aren't any main women characters. They barely have any speaking part at all. But I did make another story which is called Sari's Mother, which is going to be screened tomorrow, which does have a woman as the main character. So I was able to do it despite the difficulties, and I did try. And another story that I did film but didn't finish was about a women's shelter in Erbil up in northern Iraq. But even there, and actually my younger sister, Margaret, she came and filmed part of that story because I just thought it would be easier for her. But even in that case, it was difficult, even with a woman cinematographer working in a women's shelter. Still, it was nervous making for them. So you can't always get what you want. The film I'm working on now in Afghanistan, it does include a lot of, it's about a school in Kabul, and it does include women teachers, for example, but it's never as much as I want. And I think sometimes, I know that there's a film also in Afghanistan about a girls' school, made by a woman director, and the principal of the school is a woman, and the cinematographer is a woman, and it's a private school, and so they're interested in having someone make a film there, and kind of all the stars are aligned. And in that case, it is possible to actually make a film which is all about women and girls, and really not, and it's sort of like this in reverse, right? So it's possible to do it, but as a guy, as a Western man, there are limits to what I can do. but I did my best. I promise.
Great question. When I've traveled into Afghanistan as a journalist, I used to travel with a female reporter who was Italian, and we'd go into a village and immediately split up, and she'd talk to the women, and I'd talk to the men, and then we'd exchange notes.
Right.
Who's got the next question? Oh, over here.
Hello, my name is Diana. Two questions. One is you have very poignant interviews with the children. So I was wondering about how the process was to get them to articulate. And the second question is language barriers. So how were you able to, I don't know if you speak Arabic or Kurdish, how are you able to ask follow-up questions or...
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm always working with a local translator in these situations. Like every day that I'm filming, I'm always with a local person. There are 12 different translators listed. Some of them only worked with me for a short time. Some of them worked with me for, over a year. And obviously I had different translators in the Kurdish areas and the Shia area. You have to have kind of the right translator for the particular subject that you're filming. Sometimes in a divided country like this, but so that helped a lot, right? I never translated anything in the moment while I was filming. I always just operated on body language, and after a while you do pick up enough of the language that you can kind of understand a bit of what's being said. But usually, the things that people say have less meaning than the things that people are doing. And how people act, and so that's what I usually go by. And when you're filming, it can be kind of the making of the picture can become all-consuming. And even if I understood the language, I might not have heard anything anyway during some of the filming. So. All the translation. I translated everything while I was still in Iraq, working with Iraqi translators. And usually, if I recorded an interview, I tried to translate it immediately afterwards. But mainly it was just a kind of volume. I had hundreds and hundreds of hours of video, and then I also recorded. Like for example, the Mohammed Haitham Majid, the kid in the first chapter. I think I recorded like 28 different interviews with him or something like that over the course of a year. And in the beginning, he was completely inarticulate. He could barely say anything. He was so shy. But by the end, he was fine. And so, I had enough to make a 28-minute chapter with him. But it just took time. It just takes a lot of patience.
Great question. When you were filming, were you trying to be more of a fly on the wall and let people speak and you just kind of absorb it?
Yeah, I mean, if I could have just made myself completely invisible, I would have done that. I'm always trying to get that feeling. Like I want the audience to forget that there is someone there with a camera and all. I'm trying to erase myself. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jane from JMC. I want to ask a question that when you're shooting the documentary about war, I think it might be a great impact on the filmmaker himself. So especially when you shoot some scenes about hurt people and some people got injured, even died. So how did you recover from it?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer this question.
I mean, do you ever feel any PTSD?
It's like always in life, it's difficult to imagine yourself as you were before, right? So it's hard to know how you change, I think, in these situations, right? It's like if you learn a language, it's difficult to remember what it's like not to know the language then. Like, it's hard to rewind and see the change that happens to you. I don't really know. I guess maybe a little bit, but I mean, I wasn't really. It's a film taking place in a conflict zone, but at the same time, my focus wasn't really on war. Like I didn't embed with U.S. military and go around experiencing combat all the time. My focus is really civilians and people just trying to live their ordinary life. When you're filming, when you have a camera, it kind of psychologically it can provide a kind of shield between what's happening and yourself. psychologically. So, maybe it helped.
But I'm just wondering if there was some really unique quality that struck you that was really interesting to you, that brought you there, something about the country you fell in love with and something unique about it.
Well, I fall in love with all the places that I go, I guess. But the reason, if you're asking what's the reason that I'm going to the country in the first place, I'm choosing the countries where I go because of their relevance to an American audience, mainly. Like I could make a film in any place. I could make a film on a farm in Kyrgyzstan or something like that. But for the average American audience, they might say, well, this is a nice film and it's very beautiful, but what does it have to do with me? After Iraq, I tried to start a new film in Iran, and I was there for 14 months before being kicked out. And then after that, I moved the same project to Pakistan and was kicked out during after the Osama bin Laden kind of scandal in Pakistan. And then moved it to Afghanistan. So really, I'm choosing the countries based on how important it is for Americans to understand it in order to have a better conception of their own foreign policy, I guess.
Good question. No plan to go to Syria now.
Yeah, I don't have any plan to go to Syria actually. I'm not sure if it's practical to make a film there. Yeah.
Could I just follow up on one thing? Sure. Is that one of the reasons why there was so many conversations about America's intent and what America's involvement was? Was it questions that you were asking to lead people into those conversations, or were you just standing back and listening to what people were talking about?
Well, mostly I'm just standing back. People know I'm an American, so sometimes they make commentary on that's relevant to that. And people want to be understood also. I don't know exactly which part you're referring to, but in some cases people think that they're sending a message. In other cases, it's just conversation going on, and I'm flying on the wall or what have you. Yeah.
There was a scene that a couple of guys bullied the man, beat him down or something. Then how do you film it?
In the marketplace.
Right. So we kind of went over that, I think, earlier, that I spent time getting to know that group, and so they were okay with me filming, and it was an alcohol raid, so they're trying to arrest the people who are selling alcohol in the market because they're trying to enforce, kind of Islamic, not Islamic law, I guess, but sort of an Islamic way of living, and so they're arresting these alcohol sellers in the same way that DEA agents might bust down doors and arrest people selling crack cocaine somewhere. You know what I mean? It's they have the same. They don't think they're doing something wrong. Right? They think that they're enforcing the law, I guess, and so because of that, they allow me to film, and it's not as dangerous for me as it seems on the screen, I guess. Yeah.
And just one there.
I have two questions. One relates to the editing process, because like you say, you did 28 or something interviews with just the kid.
Well,
so I can imagine that the editing process must be really difficult. So can you just give us a little bit about that? And the other question relates to the American thing. So I'm just curious about reception back home. Do you get any trouble for making a film where everyone's complaining about American imperialism?
Well, so I'll answer the last part first. Actually, not everyone is complaining about American imperialism. The Kurds, for example, are saying God brought America to the Kurds, and they're generally happy because they didn't suffer as much because of the war, especially at that point. And so they were quite happy to see the fall of the Saddam regime, because the Kurdish population suffered quite a lot because of the Saddam regime. So I guess the thing that I'm showing in the film, I'm trying to be as realistic as possible about the reaction, the feeling toward the Americans, and it's varied. It's not uniform across the country and across ethnic groups, and everyone has their own opinion. So, if you go in and make a film where everyone says we're quite happy that the Americans are here, it just wouldn't be an honest movie. I didn't receive any problems in the United States. The film won all kinds of awards. It was nominated for an Academy Award and received good reviews everywhere. New York Times. I don't know. So it was. I didn't have anyone. You know, I'm sure some people watch the film and they have this impression like it's an anti-American film or something, but I was really just trying to record what I found. And, you know, it's hard to get in trouble for that. I mean, it is possible, but, you know, you can always defend yourself by saying it's reality. If you can't deal with it, then it's your problem.
I think we could pick a couple more if there are a couple more questions.
Oh, the
here.
editing, I'm sorry. So editing, there's 300 hours of video and a lot of interviews, and so it took 8 months to edit, working with myself included, 3 people. So we were kind of in a small windowless room for 8 months. Yeah, and the film came out. I don't know exactly how that happened.
Do you have any production advice for filmmakers who might also be interested in filming in a foreign country, since you manned your own camera and was on the ground for so long?
Well, I mean, I would just say always work with local people. I wouldn't go in as a foreigner to a country that I didn't really know and try to work, you know, with a bunch of other foreigners, for example. I think it's really important to work with local people and really try to assimilate yourself as much as possible. If your goal is to understand the culture and, you know, and sort of get inside the place. That's the main thing, is just finding really good local people to work with, I think. If you don't have good people helping you, you just never make a good project.
The young Muhammad also was very articulate, political discourses like who America is and I mean what they are doing, right? I was just wondering whether they knew you were an American during the process of interviews.
Yeah, I'm not one of these people who goes around with like a backpack with a Canadian flag on it or something like that. I always told people that I'm an American, you know, because you know, what can I do? They're gonna find out anyway, right? I mean,
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
if you have other questions, you can friend me on Facebook.
you can find him on Facebook. And can we just give one good round of applause for this powerful film and for James?